They whispered that I didn't belong. They used racist remarks to chip away at my spirit, hoping I'd just break and quietly disappear. And they thought they'd won. They saw my light dim, saw the exhaustion in my eyes. What they didn't see was that the very strength they were trying to shatter was being forged into the weapon for a comeback that would leave the entire office speechless. Their whole campaign was designed to force me out, to make me feel so small and isolated that I would simply pack my desk and vanish. What they didn't know was that they weren't just pushing against me. They were pushing against a history of resilience they couldn't possibly understand. They thought they were breaking me. Turns out they were just forging a weapon. But to really get what happened in that silent conference room, you need to know how it all started. It all started when I landed what I thought was my dream job. My name is Imani, and I'd just been hired as a senior marketing analyst at a top tech firm. I had worked so hard for this, graduating top of my class and acing every interview. So walking into that shiny high-rise on my first day, I was just buzzing with pride. The future felt wide open. The office was exactly what you'd picture. Open plan, floor-to-ceiling windows, and a sea of mostly white faces bent over their keyboards. I was one of only a handful of black employees, but that didn't intimidate me. I was excited. I was ready to work hard, bring my ideas to the table, and build my career. I just wanted to keep the peace, to just fit in. I'd offered to help colleagues. I was the first to volunteer for extra tasks, and I always came to meetings with solutions. I figured if my work was great and I kept a positive attitude, nothing else would matter. I truly believed my talent would speak for itself, loud enough to shut down any prejudice. That was a naive, beautiful thought, wasn't it? Too bad it was about to get completely shattered. The poison came from one person, a senior colleague named Caroline. It didn't start with some big confrontation. It started quietly, with those little digs and subtle comments that are designed to make you think you're going crazy. It began with my name. I'd say, Imani, and hold out my hand. She'd give this thin, tight smile and call me Amanda or Imelda. When I'd correct her, she'd just wave her hand dismissively and go, "Oh, you know what I mean. It's so exotic." Seems like a small thing, but it was constant. A daily reminder that I was the other, that my very identity was an inconvenience. Then came the backhanded compliments, which are a classic form of microaggression. After I nailed a complex data presentation, Caroline cornered me by the coffee machine. "I'm just so impressed with how articulate you are," she said, her voice just dripping with fake sincerity. That unspoken, for a black woman, just hung there in the air. It was suffocating. The first major incident happened about 2 months in. We were assigned to a high-stakes project together, and I put in late nights and weekends crafting a strategy one was so proud of. Then, the day before the presentation, I discovered my key slides were gone from our shared deck. When I frantically asked Caroline what happened, she barely looked up from her screen. "Oh dear," she said, feigning surprise. "You must have forgotten to save it." "Don't worry, I stayed up late and redid the work. I'll present." She used my erased work as an opportunity to paint herself as the hero and me as incompetent. That's when I knew this wasn't just casual ignorance. This was a deliberate attack. After that presentation, the floodgates opened. Caroline's campaign escalated from subtle sabotage to straight-up hostility. She was determined to see me fail, and she wanted everyone else to watch. Her comments got bolder. In team meetings, if I proposed an idea, she'd cut in with, "Let's get a more traditional perspective on this." She started building a little circle of allies, whispering about my aggressive tone, or how I wasn't a cultural fit. People I once had lunch with started to avoid eye contact. That isolation became a physical weight on my chest. This kind of workplace mobbing is designed to make every day a living hell. Honestly, the worst part was the internal struggle. I started to doubt myself. Was my tone aggressive? Was I not a team player? Her racist harassment was so insidious it was making me question my own reality. I'd go home completely drained, the anger and frustration curdling into despair. The job I once loved had become a source of constant pain, affecting my mental health and self-worth. There were moments I was close to breaking. I'd just sit in my car and cry, too exhausted to even drive home. I thought about quitting almost every day. They were winning. The shift, the moment I decided enough was enough, wasn't loud. It was a quiet, cold clarity that hit me one Tuesday morning. We were discussing outreach to new demographics, and I suggested a campaign targeting HBCU graduates. Caroline laughed and said, "Why would we do that? We're looking for top talent." The whole team went silent. And in that silence, I didn't feel shame or anger. I just felt nothing. The emotional armor I had been building for months finally clicked into place. I looked at her and realized a fundamental truth. Being liked is not the same as being valued. My desire to keep the peace had come at the cost of my self-respect. That day, I stopped absorbing the abuse. And I started planning. I created a new folder on my personal drive. And I started documenting everything. Dates, times, witnesses, exact quotes. Her plan was to break me. My plan was to build a case so undeniable it would detonate her career. Before I tell you what happened next, and how I turned Caroline's biggest stage into her worst nightmare, make sure you subscribe if you love stories about justice and reclaiming your power. You won't want to miss how this ends. My chance came 6 weeks later. It was the company's annual all-hands strategy summit, the biggest meeting of the year. The entire executive board, including the CEO, was there. Our team was scheduled to present our flagship project. Yep, the exact same one Caroline had sabotaged months earlier, which she now effectively controlled. She took the stage, beaming under the lights. She talked for 15 minutes about synergy and innovation. Then, she moved to a slide titled Key Performance and Contributor Analysis. There was my headshot, next to a bar chart showing my contributions, as way lower than everyone else's. "As you can see," she said, pointing to the slide, "we've had some challenges with integration and performance from new hires. While we aim for diversity, we must also ensure that standards of excellence are maintained for everyone." The room was silent. All eyes were on me. The CEO was frowning. This was it. Her final public move to humiliate and discredit me. She thought she had me cornered, so I stood up. "Caroline, could you please go back to that slide?" I asked, my voice completely calm and steady. She looked surprised, but a smug smile played on her lips. "Of course, Imani." I walked to the front of the room and stood right beside her, facing the audience of executives. "Thank you. You've presented a very interesting story today. A story of a team that succeeded despite a supposed weak link. But I'd like to offer a few footnotes to that story." I pulled a single piece of paper from my blazer pocket. "On May 15th, you told our colleague Mark that my hair was too unprofessional for a client-facing role. On June 3rd, during a team lunch, you joked that I only got this job because of affirmative action. On July 22nd, you deleted 18 of my slides from a shared presentation deck at 11:47 p.m., the night before a deadline, and then claimed credit for redoing the work yourself. I didn't raise my voice. I spoke clearly, stating each documented fact. With every sentence, Caroline's face grew paler. The smug smile was gone, replaced by sheer panic. "You speak of standards of excellence," I continued, turning to look directly at her. "But your behavior has shown a standard of bigotry, sabotage, and harassment. The dip in my performance didn't begin when I started this job. It began the moment you decided I didn't belong here. My contributions aren't lacking. Your character is." I placed my paper on the podium. The silence in the room was absolute. You could hear the hum of the projector. I hadn't yelled. I hadn't cried. I had simply held up a mirror, and she was forced to see her own ugliness. In that moment, I reclaimed my dignity not by asking for it, but by demonstrating it. Everyone in that room was left utterly and completely speechless. I turned away from Caroline's ghost-white face, gave a slight nod to the executive board, and walked back to my seat. The entire room remained frozen. No one looked at Caroline. They looked at me, and for the first time I didn't see pity. I saw shock. And I saw respect. The chief marketing officer, my boss's boss, was the first to break the silence. He cleared his throat and said, "Thank you, Imani. Caroline, we're done here. My office. Now." He didn't even glance at her as he walked off the stage. The rest of the summit was effectively cancelled. As people filed out of the room in hushed whispers, my direct manager came over. He just looked at me and said, "I am so sorry. Can I see you Monday morning?" First thing. It wasn't a threat. It was a plea. The power dynamic had irrevocably shifted. Caroline was fired that afternoon. An internal investigation was launched, and several of her allies received severe reprimands for their complicity. The company mandated a top-to-bottom overhaul of its DEI and anti-harassment training, led by an outside firm. But the real change was personal. Those scars from months of abuse didn't just disappear. But they were no longer reminders of my pain. They were reminders of my survival. They were proof of the unshakable strength I found when I was pushed to my absolute limit. I learned that my power wasn't in being liked, it was in being respected. And respect isn't just given. Sometimes it has to be taken. I didn't just win a battle against a racist coworker. I won back my confidence, my voice, and my right to take up space. My comeback wasn't just about exposing her. It was about reclaiming me. And in the end, that was the most epic victory of all. I got the last laugh not because she was fired, but because I emerged from the fire stronger, more confident, and completely unbroken. What would you have done in my position? Have you ever had to fight for your dignity at work? Share your story in the comments below. And don't forget to like and share if you believe in the power of a great comeback.